Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to the channel for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open, the floor, as they would say, is yours. What do you guys want to talk about? That's what we're here to discuss. My name, of course, is John Campea. Good to have you guys here. Now, here on Open Mic, it is just basically that. The pretty much the whole show is just us taking your questions. Now, the way you get a question on the John Campea show earlier in the day is by using our tip link. But for Open Mics, if you guys have a question or a topic you'd like us to discuss, as long as I deem it appropriate to be discussed on the show, you use the super chat features. Now that means you got to be watching live. You have to be watching Open Mic live. So if you are here and you're watching live, you have a topic or question, an observation, a theory, you can go ahead and fire that in on the super chats. It's good to have you guys. Had a good show this morning. It's always good to have Chris here. Tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow's a big day. Hello, everybody in the live chat. It's a huge day in the movie calendar. Oscar nominations come out tomorrow morning. And, you know, I think we've started to get a picture of what we are going to see in the Oscar nominations from things like Critics' Choice, Golden Globes, SAGs, all that kind of stuff. I think we're starting to develop a picture, but don't forget that there have been many times over the years when like something like a Best Actress category has been pretty consistent through the SAG nominations, Golden Globes, and whatever. And then we get some big surprises. So we're going to get some surprises tomorrow. And then, of course, as soon as the Oscar nominations come out, there's going to be the very debatable, very predictable who got snubbed conversation. Everybody's going to think somebody got snubbed. So we're going to see. So it's going to be me and Rob's going to be in tomorrow talking about Oscar nominations. So that's going to be fun. All right. Before we get into your questions, though, I had a topic I wanted to bring up. One of our viewers actually wrote it in earlier today, and I thought it might be an interesting topic to kind of kick off Open Mic with, and that is Superman. Now, we've been talking a lot about Superman for the last while, understandably so. And, you know, rightfully so. We've been talking a lot about... Okay, let's try this. Oops. What just happened? Something just happened on my computer. I'm not sure what it was. Give me a second. Give me a second to find out what happened on my computer. Oh, that's what happened on my computer. Never mind. Okay. So, where was I? Oh yeah. So, with the whole thing, we've been talking a lot about Superman, rightfully so. And we've mostly been talking about Superman from an optimistic point of view, right? Like we've talked about the importance of it to be a good movie. Like it's more important for Superman to be a good movie than it is for it to do financially well. Because they're fine. If the first one doesn't do financially well, that's okay, as long as the movie is great and sets up all the future DCU movies for success and to make the money. Warner Brothers and DC aren't so concerned, I've said this many times, about the couple of $1 million they can make on Superman. They're concerned about the billions of dollars they want to make with the DCU going forward. And it's going to set them back a lot if Superman isn't good. So for the most part, we've been talking about Superman in very optimistic terms. Here's why we believe in it. Here's why we have faith in it. I love the trailer. Here's the things we liked about the trailer. All that kind of stuff. All right. But as one of our viewers pointed out to me earlier today, haven't really heard you. I mean, we've heard you talk, John, about how it's bad if the movie's not good, but we haven't heard you talk about how it could go bad. You've talked a lot about how it could go great, but you haven't really talked about how it could go bad. And I thought about that for a second. I thought, you know what? You're right. You're right. We really haven't. So I wanted to take just a few minutes tonight to talk about the 5 ways that I think Superman could go real bad, real fast. Now, I'm not saying, before we get into these 5 things, be clear, I'm not saying any of these things are going to happen. I'm just saying these are 5 things that if these are problems that exist within the Superman movie, it's a way the movie could go right down the crapper pretty quickly. Because again, we've talked a lot about all the ways it can go right. It's only fair if we talk about some of the ways that it could potentially go wrong. All right. The first thing I'm going to mention here, And it may sound silly because of some of the things we've been talking about recently. But the first way that Superman could go really wrong is if the movie feels overcrowded and it doesn't actually feel like a Superman movie. Now, if you guys watch the show on a regular basis, you guys know that I'm not really concerned about that, right? Because, you get everybody going, oh my gosh, like it's got Green Lantern and it's got Hawk Girl and it's got Ultraman. It's too many characters. And my thing is, open the IMDb page of just about any movie ever made. You got your one or two leads, and then you've got like 15, 16, 17 supporting characters because other characters inhabit that world. There is no difference with having a Superman movie, a Superman who lives in a world that has a bunch of other superheroes. So a bunch of the supporting characters are also just going to happen to be superpowered beings. It's no different than any other movie you pull up on an IMDb and see that it has 10 other supporting characters, right? It's just that you happen to recognize the names of the supporting characters in Superman. So I personally don't have much fear of that at all right? There's no more characters in this Superman movie than there are in 90% of other movies made. You just happen to know the names of these characters, that's all. But, even though I'm not worried about it, and even though I don't think James Gunn is going to have a problem with this, and even though James Gunn has already done multiple movies with multiple superhero characters, Guardians of the Galaxy, Suicide Squad, and whatnot, and he handled them all perfectly and it's fine. All that may be true. But if we go in and sit down and watch Superman, and it does feel crowded, and it does feel like all the screen time is being eaten up by supporting characters, and if it starts to feel like, wow, this Superman movie doesn't actually have all that much Superman in it, and if, like, having screen time for Green Lantern and Supergirl and whatever takes away from possible plot points involving Lois Lane and Lex Luthor, because they're really the two main characters besides Superman. And if, again, like I said, James Gunn does this thing in such a way where it's like it doesn't even feel like a Superman movie. This just feels like a low-key Justice League movie. If he doesn't handle the screen time allotments and how he manages the supporting characters and truly treat them as supporting characters, and Superman gets lost in his own movie, guys, that ain't good. That ain't good. Saturday Morning Fan brings up a good point. Says, so Beetlejuice, who had less than 20 minutes of screen time in his own movie. True, but this isn't Beetlejuice. This is Superman. And it's the start of a brand new cinematic universe. And you better lead out well. So while I personally am not worried about it, and I don't think James Gunn is going to have a problem with this at all, and I really think that this is no different than 90% of other movies made, if the movie feels crowded and it starts to take away from it even feeling like a Superman movie, that is one way this movie can go south really quick. All right. So the first one is if it feels too crowded. The second way that Superman can go bad really fast, that this movie can go bad really fast is, and again, I'm not really worried about this, but if it happens, it could be bad for the film. If Nicholas Hoult does not feel like he's working as Lex Luthor. Listen, Superman is a Superman movie, but I don't just think having a solid Lex Luthor is important just for the Superman movie. I think it's important for a brand new cinematic universe that's called DC. You've got to have Nicholas Hoult work. We got to see Nicholas Hoult saunter on screen and really nail whatever version of Lex Luthor, whatever way he wants to manifest Lex Luthor is fine, but he better nail it, whatever way that is. He's got to make me feel like he is one of the world's smartest men. He's got to make me feel he sees himself as the hero. He's got to make me feel that rage and that resentment and that spite. He's got to make us feel his genius. Nicholas Hoult has to deliver on that, because if he doesn't, kind of in the way that Jesse Eisenberg didn't really crush it as Lex Luthor in the DCEU. And by the way, I didn't mind Jesse Eisenberg's rendition of Lex Luthor, but it didn't work for a lot of people. And that's one of the big reasons that the DCEU, all this kind of stuff, Batman versus Superman, did not work for a lot of people, because Jesse Eisenberg never convinced him he was Lex Luthor. It was so far out in left field, and he never even made us feel like his interpretation of Lex Luthor was all that believable, right? Nicholas Hoult has to crush it don't get me wrong. He doesn't have to be better than Gene Hackman. He doesn't have to be better than Michael Rosenbaum. That's not the point. It's not a point of comparison. It's just that he has to take whatever Lex Luthor he and James Gunn are trying to manifest and really sell us on it. It's okay if he's different from Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor. It's okay if he's different from Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor. It's okay if he's a bit different from the various animated versions of Lex Luthor. All that is fine, but you gotta make us believe in this rich character. And if Nicholas Hoult doesn't do it, it's not a good sign for the movie. And by extension, it's not a good sign for the MCU as a whole. I would even say this. I'm not saying Lex Luthor is a more important character than Lois Lane, but the nature of the character, it's like more important for Nicholas to nail that than it is for Rachel to nail Lois. And I mean that wholeheartedly. And again, I'm not taking away from how important the Lois character is. I'm just saying it's not as vital to the film or as vital to the DCU as a whole that Rachel nail Lois as much as it is for Nicholas to nail his Lex. Right? That's super important, and it's got to work. So the first way I think that this Superman movie can go south really fast is if it feels too crowded. The second way it can go south really fast is if Nicholas Hoult doesn't absolutely crush it as Lex Luthor. All right. Here's the third way that this Superman movie can fall on its face pretty quickly. And again, just like the other two, I'm not worried about this happening. I don't think this will happen, but if it does, it's a problem. If the movie feels too silly. Now, I believe that comic book movies should have joy. Not every single one of them, but some of them are more, kind of skewed and work better if they take a darker, more serious approach. But I think comic book movies, and I think the box office has proven that the audience is looking for comic book movies that can have, great action and some dark themes too. Yes, but they also got to have joy, right? People want to see it. Like, as much as you may, in your little internet bubbles, may hear people saying, no, I want dark and gritty. Guess what? The average moviegoers don't. Average moviegoers want some joy. It absolutely has to have that, but it can't go too far. A great example of this is two different Thor movies. Thor Ragnarok versus Thor Love and Thunder. They both tried to be the same thing, but one went way too far in one direction. Thor Ragnarok, I think, is probably a top 10 best comic book movie ever. Maybe not top 5, but I think Thor Ragnarok is a top 10 comic book movie ever made. The brilliance of Thor Ragnarok, and I'll explain how this kind of ties into Superman and where Superman could go wrong. The brilliance of Thor Ragnarok was the balance of heavy, serious, dark moments with fun, energetic, joyful moments. And it was a great balance of the two. Like, in the same movie, we watched the All-Father Odin die, right? Like, we saw Thor lose Asgard. We saw the world of Asgard, the Eternal City, destroyed. We watched Thor basically, in a connected way, have to kill his own sister. Like, we saw Thor lose his own eye. But we also, in that same movie, had a big stone monster go piss off, ghost. Which, by the way, I don't care what anybody says, piss off, ghost is one of the single funniest moments in comic book movies ever. Piss off, ghost. I love that. It had the balance, right? It had the balance of the fun and funny and joyful and excitement with some heavy stuff, and it balanced it out, and it made for a really satisfying, wonderful, successful package. Then we go to Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor: Love and Thunder wanted, I believe, to capture again the elements of dark, gritty, heavy with light, joyful fun. But what Taika Waititi unfortunately did in Thor: Love and Thunder was he skewed way more towards the silly. Like way more towards the silly. Where it got so into the silly, like Bao, the god of dumplings? Really? Anyway, it skewed so much into the silly that it actually took away, not just from the heavier, serious stuff, it actually took away from the fun, funny stuff as well. They lost their sense of balance. And they went all the way to this other side. And it just like, okay, yeah, we get it. There's a love triangle between Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, and Thor. It was funny the first 5 times you did the joke, but they just kept leaning into it more and more and more. And so, listen, at the end of the day, I still enjoyed Thor: Love and Thunder. I did, but it was such a shadow of what that movie could have been if they had struck that proper balance like they did in Thor Ragnarok. That brings us back to Superman. James Gunn is a master of bringing fun and joy and whatever to his films, but he's also really good at bringing that Thor Ragnarok balance. Again, just look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Any one of the 3, James Gunn strikes that balance between heavy, tragic, heartbreaking, serious, dark moments with dance-offs and just fun and joy. He's been able to strike that balance. Even look at his Suicide Squad movie, right? Like you've got Idris Elba and John Cena running through a village doing a kill-off, trying to see which one can kill people in the most creative way. But at the same time, we got one of the most heartbreaking like side stories about Ratcatcher 2 and her father. Like, come on, tell me that whole sequence wasn't moving. We get that scene of King Shark in the van and looking out the window and seeing couples holding each other's hands and seeing the despair on his face. Like, he's just found a way to strike that balance. Now, in Peacemaker, he goes a little bit more silly, but he doesn't go so far as to lose his way like Thor: Love and Thunder did. So I would say if he can approach Superman and bring that, say, first Guardians of the Galaxy balance of the heavier, grittier, more serious tones with the fun, joy, entertainment tones as well, I think they're going to do well. But if James Gunn kind of loses his way a little bit and just gets all caught up in just the pure silliness like Thor: Love and Thunder did, Superman could be in trouble. The movie Superman could really be in trouble. And that is something that James Gunn, I have every belief that he will find the balance, but it's absolutely vital that he finds that balance. So that's my third thing. All right. So my first thing about how Superman could fall on its face really quick is if the movie ends up feeling too crowded. I don't think it will. I really don't think it will. But if it does, it's a problem. The second one is Nicholas Hoult has to crush his Lex Luthor. He's got to make us believe in this Lex Luthor. He has to get us invested in this Lex Luthor, or else Superman and the DCU as a whole could be in trouble. The third thing, of course, he cannot let this movie feel too silly. Have it be bright, have it be entertaining, have it be fun, have a little bit of silliness in there to balance out the heavier, darker, serious tones, but don't lean too far one way or the other. All right. Let me get on to a fourth thing. Sorry, I got to use a remote to scratch my back. I got an itchy spot on my back. Okay. The fourth thing that I think is a way that this movie could fall on its face if it's not careful is this. James Gunn is a comic book aficionado, right? He knows his comics and the history of the comics far better than you or your friends do, or me. I mean, maybe John Schnepp would have given him a run for his money, but I mean, James Gunn has been reading this stuff for decades and decades and decades. But here's the potential pitfall with that and what they've got to avoid. James Gunn has to avoid assuming the audience knows the inside baseball stuff. What do I mean by that? Don't assume that the audience knows who Guy Gardner is. I guarantee you, if you just go into if you go to a McDonald's and stand outside the front door and you survey 100 people coming out of McDonald's, say, just quick question, do you know who Guy Gardner is? I guarantee you 90, maybe 92 out of the 100 people that come out of that McDonald's will have no idea who you're talking about. No idea who you're talking about. And 98 of them will have no idea what you're talking about if you mention Ultraman. They'll say, is that some kind of kitchen cleaner? They'll have no idea what you're talking about. The thing that can become a problem if James Gunn isn't careful is, because this happens with all of us, right? We're talking to people and sometimes we just assume the people we're talking to know what we know, right? We just kind of take that for granted. If James Gunn is making this movie and just like, I'm going to make this joke and everybody will laugh. Well, no, James, people only laugh if they understood this backstory of this character that they probably don't know the backstory of. James Gunn has to be careful to make sure that in making the Superman movie, he doesn't lose the audience in inside baseball stuff. Don't assume the audience knows any of the lore. Assume they know where Superman came from. Assume that everybody knows that Superman was launched as a baby. Yeah. There's that foundational stuff that almost everybody in our culture knows. Sure. But don't get caught up in the stuff that probably most people don't know. Because as VJ puts it, nerds versus casuals. We got to remember the nerds are the 5% of the audience. The casuals are the 95%. Make the assumption that they don't know who these characters are. Make the assumption that the audience has no idea. Like Lois and Lex, whatever. But when you're talking about Ultraman or Rick Flag Sr., or you're talking about Hawk Girl, you're talking about Guy Gardner, you're talking about whatever, assume the audience doesn't know anything about them. Because if you assume that they do, this movie is going to lose a lot of people really fast, and that's going to become a problem. All right. The fifth way that this Superman movie could go really bad, really fast, and totally fall on its face is David Cornsweet, the guy they chose to play Superman. Now, I only really know David from that series he did. I believe it was on Netflix called Hollywood. He was really good in it. He was, but that was just one role. Now, he was also in Twisters, and he was good in Twisters, but it was a small role. Like, we didn't really get to see much of him or anything like that. So, I mean, he was good in it, but it was a very small role. Now, obviously, I trust James Gunn. I mean, his casting, Nicholas Hoult, is remarkable. Rachel from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, she's a multi-award-winning actress. She's going to kill it. She's going to be great. Everybody else he's cast has been terrific casting, but David's the one big question mark. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to be great. Not at all. I think he will be great. If James Gunn picked him, and hey, listen, say what you want. James Gunn has a knack for casting, man. He has a knack for picking the right, like, who would have thought that Chris Pratt would have been cast as the lead in an MCU film? But James Gunn saw it and he knew it fit his vision, and boom, there it went great. So all that kind of stuff. But just like we were talking about how if Nicholas Hoult fails to capture the audience as Lex and fails to really sell us on his version of Lex, that's bad for this movie. Take that and multiply it by 5. Take it and multiply it by 5. If David Cornsweet doesn't make us believe a man can fly, if he doesn't sell us on this character and make us believe that this is Superman, the way that Henry Cavill did for me. Henry Cavill sold me immediately that this guy is Superman. It was a different interpretation of Superman. It was a different expression of Superman, but he sold me on it immediately. And I hate to put the pressure on too much, but he damn well better do that. David Cornsweet better do that with his Superman. Again, it doesn't have to be the same Superman that Henry Cavill played. It doesn't have to be the same Superman that Brandon Routh played. It doesn't have to be the same Superman that Christopher Reeve played. No. Make it your own Superman. That's fine. Every one of those guys made Superman their own in some unique way. But make sure you make us buy into it, or else this movie is going to go nowhere fast. So again, the 5 ways I think Superman could go bad very quickly are: number 1, if it feels too crowded. Number 2, if Nicholas Hoult doesn't sell us on his Lex Luthor. Number 3, if it skews too silly and it starts to feel silly. Number 4, it assumes the audience knows things about the characters, which probably most of them don't. And number 5, if David Cornsweet doesn't work. Then if those things happen, man, this movie is not going to work. Just not going to work. Now, again, I don't really believe that any of these are going to be a problem. James Gunn has shown he can manage all of these types of situations. He can cast great. He knows how to handle characters that the audience doesn't know. There's really not that many characters in this movie compared to 90% of the other movies out there. Nicholas Hoult, I think, is going to do great. I'm not really worried about any of these things. I'm just saying, if these things go bad, the movie goes bad. Anyway, question is for you guys. What do you think about this? Do you think any of these are problems? Do you have some other things that, hey, if they don't do this right in the movie could go bad really fast? Do you have some other ones? If so, jump down into the super chats, fire it on in, and let me know what you guys think. All right. With that said, guys, let's now get down to the stuff we're here for, which is taking your live comments and questions, shall we? We're going to get started off here with Dr. Stinky, who writes, pick 1, drop 2. Deadpool 4, Dune 3, or Sons of Anarchy 8. Ooh. Okay. I think I might surprise you. Now, first of all, I want all 3 of these. All right. I want all 3 of these. I want Deadpool 4. I want Dune 3. I want Sons of Anarchy Season 8. I want them all. But if you're saying I could only pick one and lose the others, the one I would pick is Sons of Anarchy Season 8. Really, John? Yeah. I mean, listen, I want the other 2 as well, but Ryan Reynolds has given us 3 Deadpool movies, and they've all been great. I want to see more, but I'll live if we don't get a 4th. Dune 3, Dune 2, I think is, like I said, the best movie of the last 10 years. I love the first Dune as well. But you guys have heard me say I don't have a lot of faith in the source material for Dune Messiah. I still am looking forward to it. I know Denis Villeneuve is going to do something great with it. But I would love to see the story of the Sons of Anarchy happen after the death of Jax Teller. You know, the show ends with Jax's death. That's fine. That's fine. The club continues. And I would love to see what happens after that. We got to see a little bit of a glimpse of what happens with the club after Jax's death in the Mayans. But I would really love a show that just focuses on the Sons of Anarchy again. So while I want all 3, if I had to pick just one, for me, it would be Sons of Anarchy Season 8. All right. Next up, we've got Dwayne, who writes, hey, John, I just wanted to recommend the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic. We've talked about it on the show. One, the movie is based on. Finally read it, and it was great. Okay, so the first thing I want to caution, though, is don't expect that the movie is going to follow the comic book. Other than Sin City, there's never really been a major comic book film that has just straight up followed the comic. Sin City did. You might be, out of the 60, 70, 80 comic book movies, you might be able to pick out one or two that maybe followed the comic more closely than others. But for the most part, you guys have heard me say this before, Civil War was nothing like the comic book story Civil War. X-Men Days of Future Past was nothing like the X-Men Days of Future Past comic book. I mean, it definitely borrowed themes and plot devices, but it was also its own, very much its own thing. Don't expect the Supergirl movie to be Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow in movie form. I mean, we already know some of the characters are going to be there. Like, what? I don't know how to pronounce the girl's name. Do you pronounce it Ruthie? It's kind of spelt Ruthie, but I don't know if that's how you're supposed to say it. Where she's on this quest of vengeance to avenge the death of her father and the positions and the situations that puts Supergirl in. It's great, and I'm sure there's definitely going to be themes from that, plot devices from that, just like Civil War did, just like Days of Future Past did. But I think you're also going to see something that is very unique from the comic book. So again, don't go into the movie expecting to see the comic book directly, the story in the comic book directly translated to the movie, because it never does. They never do. But I definitely think they will take inspiration and some plot beats from it, and we'll see how that works out. Very much looking forward to, though. Very much looking, especially with, now that we know Jason Momoa, it's going to be Lobo. All right. Next up, Orange Hand writes, most important question of the night. Favorite cake flavor? Finally we're getting down to the real stuff. The real nitty gritty. All right. Listen, dude, when it comes to food, I'm a very vanilla eater. I don't mean vanilla is in everything I eat. I mean, I'm a very plain eater, which is really weird because I'm Italian. Like, Italians tend to be more exotic eaters, and I'm actually really not. My favorite ice cream basically is vanilla. Other than that, it's like cookies and cream, which is basically vanilla with some Oreo cookies in it. I like pasta. This is true. I'm not even lying to you. When I order a burger, I just tell them, take off all the vegetation. I don't want lettuce. I don't want tomato. I certainly don't want pickle. Just give me the bread, mayo, the beef, cheese, and bacon. And then leave it alone. No vegetation. When I get a hot dog, I don't put mustard. I don't even eat mustard. I hate mustard. Mustard sucks. Apologies to all the mustard fans out there. You know what I do? Whether I'm at a hockey game with the Kings or whether I'm at a Dodger game, I get that hot dog and I get myself a packet of mayo and I put one stripe of mayo on it, and that's it. So my favorite cake is actually vanilla cake. One of my absolute favorite cakes, though, right now is a cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory called the Red Velvet Cheesecake. Cheesecake Factory's Red Velvet Cheesecake. Guys, I want to take it and rub it on my balls. Oh my God, it's so delicious. My mouth is watering right now just thinking about it. If you've not had Cheesecake Factory's Red Velvet Cheesecake, I highly recommend it. But if I'm not in Cheesecake Factory and I just generally speaking, hey, what kind of cake are you doing? I'll take the vanilla. Vanilla cake with vanilla icing. If not that, vanilla cake with chocolate icing. But vanilla cake. Don't get me wrong, I'll eat a chocolate cake. I like a good chocolate cake too, but straight up vanilla cake is my favorite because I'm a very plain, non-exotic kind of eater. All right. Next up, we've got Eddie Burton, who writes, with all the bad faith created from the former regime at Warner Brothers with their DCEU, is Superman truly a make or break project? Or could this regime still recover even if Superman doesn't connect? All right, that's a very, very good question. This is how I described it the other night. The importance of this movie cannot be overstated. But if Superman doesn't connect, if it doesn't work and the audiences don't connect to it and it doesn't do great critically and it doesn't create positive word of mouth and positive buzz, It is not the death of the DCU, but it's going to set them back a lot. It's going to take the difficult job they already have, the difficult job of creating a successful, fan-loved DC cinematic universe that is already a ridiculously tough job that they have to do. If they come out of the gate with Superman and it doesn't connect, it makes the job 3 times harder for the rest of the DCU now to make up that ground. It's hugely important. Hugely important. It's not going to be the final. It's not like the new DCU is dead just if Superman doesn't work. They still got a plan. They got more projects coming. Hell, Creature Commandos just came out. And you know what? That's a win for them. I'm not jumping out of my skin in love with Creature Commandos like some people are, but it was good. It's definitely good. It's a win for them. So they're already starting with one little win, little animated show on HBO Max. Good stuff. And if Superman doesn't work, then they still got Supergirl coming, and they're going to still have a Brave and the Bold, and they're still going to have a Swamp Thing, and they're still going to, they got other things to catch up, but it is going to make their job monumentally harder. Monumentally harder if Superman isn't good. And if it is good, it gives them a huge head start. It's going to make, if Superman connects and the audiences love it, doesn't even matter if it makes much money. But if it connects with the audience and the audiences love it and the critics love it and just creates this positive buzz about DC in general, then it's going to make the job of Supergirl and Brave and the Bold and all that kind of stuff a hell of a lot easier. So I'm not going to say it's make or break because it's only the first movie, but it is pretty vital, man. It's really, really important to them. All right. Next up, Risky Pins writes, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 official with a date of March 19th, 2027. Also said to be the last. Yeah, I mean, I could see it being the last. Here's the thing. If you guys watch the show, I'm a fan of the Sonic movies. I really enjoy them. I find them tremendously entertaining. I thought the first one was the best one. And I thought the newest one was the weakest one. But even this newest one, I really enjoyed. I found myself very entertained by it. I had a very good time, and I really enjoy these Sonic movies. That said, as a fan of these Sonic movies, even I started to feel the novelty starting to wear off a little bit. I still really like Sonic 3. You guys have heard me talk about it. Very entertaining movie. I recommend people see it. It's a good time. But even as somebody who's a big fan of it, I got to say by the end of the third movie, I could start to feel the novelty starting to wear off a little bit. And I'm starting to find them starting to feel pretty similar. Like, for example, like the post-credit scene in all 3 movies are exactly the same. Like at the post-credit scene is, oh, now there's this other character from the Sonic verse and it's Tails. Oh, okay, good. And then the end of Sonic 2. Oh, there's this other character from the Sonic universe and it's Shadow. Oh, okay, good. And then they just did the exact same thing at the end of Sonic 3. Oh, there's another character from the Sonic universe and it's Amy Rose. They're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Again, I'm not saying it didn't get a good audience pop. It absolutely did. But I think I'm starting to feel the novelty of the brilliance, but the novelty of these Sonic films starting to wear off a bit. And I think they got one more. I think it's perfectly fine that they're doing a 4th one. Absolutely. But I think then it's probably a good time to call it a day after that 4th one. And, they don't have the best momentum because Knuckles wasn't a very good show. I was very excited about Knuckles because I love that character in Sonic 2. But I didn't like the show very much, to be honest with you. So, anyway, that's just me. All right. Let's go on to the next one here. The next one comes to us from Mike Vetter, who writes, I disagree, John. What are we disagreeing about? Although most songs in Mufasa are forgettable, I still find myself, I always wanted a brother. Here's the funny thing. I I didn't think Mufasa was all that good. I thought it was okay. I liked it. You know, like if I had to go back in time, would I still go to see it? Yeah, I'd still go to see it. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the Lion King CG animated one was. I thought it was a pretty significant step down. And one of the things that I thought was really inferior to the original Lion King and even the 2019 Lion King was the music. Now, I've talked about that a lot. I don't think the music was very good in it. And I said, not one song can I even hum the tune to. Since I've been talking about that, Mike, you're not the first person to write in and say, but what about I always wanted a brother? What about that? I honestly thought that song was kind of silly. That song didn't really work for me, to be honest. But you're not alone, Mike. Again, I've had a number of people writing in to tell me that they like that song. That maybe not the music overall in the movie, and maybe they didn't love the movie in general and all that kind of stuff, but they liked that brother song. And so, yeah, it didn't work for me, but it worked for you, and it worked for a bunch of other people too. Like that seems to be the one song people write in and say, yeah, the one redeeming thing about the music in Mufasa was the brother song. And so I can respect that. Again, didn't work for me, but I'm glad it worked for you. All right. Hey guys, listen, we still got a bunch of questions to get to. The super chats are still open, all that kind of stuff. But before we get any further, we're going to take a quick break here and thank a couple of sponsors of tonight's episode of Open Mic, our friends at PrizePicks and BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, PrizePicks. Are you guys like me, both a movie and a sports fan? Well, if so, then you know that the playoffs are here and it's now or never. If you love football and want to add some real excitement to the games, let me tell you about PrizePicks, the best place for your daily fantasy sports. So here's how it works. It's super simple. You just pick more or less on player projections. Think Patrick Mahomes will throw more than 1.5 touchdowns this week, or maybe Lamar Jackson will get over 250 passing yards. Make your picks in less than a minute and take your shot at winning up to 1,000 times your cash. Ann and I have been having a blast using PrizePicks every weekend. It's simple, it's fun, and it just makes watching the games that much more exciting. Plus, PrizePicks puts you first. With easy, fast, secure withdrawals, you can get your winnings in as little as 15 minutes, and they make deposits even easier. And right now, if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So don't wait. Download the app today and use the code Campea to get $50 instantly after playing your first $5 lineup. That's right, play for just $5 and you get a $50 bonus instantly. PrizePicks, run your game. Guys, we want to thank a sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. You know, every January is like a blank slate, 365 pages waiting for you to fill them in. Perhaps it's time to rewrite a chapter that's been holding you back. Life isn't about resolutions that fade, it's about becoming the author of your own life story. And in writing that story, therapy can be your trusted editorial partner, helping you craft meaningful chapters, build resilience, and empower you to live the life that you've always envisioned. Therapy can help you learn positive coping skills, set boundaries, and become your best self. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers fully online therapy, making it affordable and convenient. With over 30,000 licensed therapists specializing in diverse needs, you can find somebody who truly understands your story. You can even switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. You know, I often hear from some of our viewers who talk about having some real struggles and challenges over the last couple of years. Well, listen, we commit ourselves to getting more physically strong and healthy by going to the gym. It's time for us to commit to getting more mentally and emotionally strong by getting involved in therapy. So write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Campea today and get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at PrizePicks and BetterHelp for sponsoring tonight's episode of Open Mic. All right, guys. That down, let's get back over to your questions here, shall we? We're going to pick things up here with Big Mouth Stan, who writes, I feel like the previous two iterations of Superman in cinema, being Man of Steel and Superman Returns, didn't really capture the public's imagination like Christopher Reeves. Something about Reeves's charisma, humor, and small task like saving a cat from a tree was so charming in the original movie. Hope James Gunn can incorporate some of those qualities to his version. All right. I'm going to say the thing that nobody is supposed to say. All right. I'm going to say the unforgivable thing. The greatness of Christopher Reeve as a man is unquestioned. And him as an actor is incredible. Like my favorite thing of Christopher Reeve isn't even Superman. It's Noises Off. He is so many of you have still not seen Noises Off that Christopher Reeve did with John Ritter and Carol Burnett and Michael Caine. And it's so good. And Christopher Reeve is so wonderful in it. You absolutely got to check it out. You got to see it. But the original Superman movie doesn't hold up that well. I actually think Superman 2 holds up a lot better today. I mean, they both feel dated, yes. But I mean, I think Superman 2 holds up much better. But you also got to remember that when Christopher Reeves' Superman came out, it was completely new. There had never been, first of all, comic book movies were not all that common. And there certainly had never been anything like it, right? There'd certainly never been anything like this movie. Like, yes, you can go back to some black and white stuff and whatever, but this was like a totally new thing. And so for an entire generation and for a long time, Superman was Christopher Reeve, and things he was doing in that was all new. But I would also suggest this, and this isn't Christopher Reeves' fault, because Christopher Reeve was just doing what the movie was telling him to do, and it worked totally fine at the time. You couldn't do that Superman today. I know people don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. You couldn't do that Superman today. Now, it was perfect for its time when we didn't have a saturation of comic book movies, and we haven't had 85 comic book movies, and we don't have 7 or 8 new comic book properties, whether it's on streaming, TV, movie theaters, whatever, all coming out every single damn year, right? It was a different era, it was a different time, and you could have that character be a certain way. But the reality is, that Superman character that Christopher Reeve played, you couldn't do that character today and have it be taken seriously. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Search your feelings. You know it to be true. It's true. And that's not taken away from the greatness of Christopher Reeve. It's just a reality about a movie that came out in oh my God, what year did it come out? 1979? 1979, 1978, something like that. Came out right around there. Correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat as to what year that first Superman movie came out. So that's true of many movies in that time and in that era. 78. Thank you, M. Joseph. And Luis are putting in 1978. I mean, a lot of movies that came out in 1978 probably feel very dated, and you couldn't do them that way today. A few classics you can, many you can't. And I think if you get a lot of people who had never seen Superman before and just say, hey, we're going to play the Superman movie for you, I don't know that it's received all that well by a modern audience, you know, in the contemporary thing we have. Do I believe, though, that one of the things that Christopher Reeve brought to the character was the charm? I don't think any other, I don't know that any other actor, and there have been some great portrayals of Superman, but I don't think any other actor has ever captured the pure charm of the character like Christopher Reeve did. Again, I have issues with the character, the way that it was written in 1978 and all that kind of stuff, but that's the one magic X factor intangible that Christopher Reeve really brought to it, was that charm. And that, gosh, golly, innocence about him, right? I don't know that modern audiences want their Superman to have a gosh, golly innocence to him. I think they want a high moral standard, high moral code, even the Boy Scout. But I don't think modern audiences want their Superman to have the, gosh, golly, ma'am, I'll go get your kitty from the tree. I just don't know that that flies today. No pun intended. So I really think it's important for James Gunn and David Corenswet to make their own Superman. Just like Tom Welling made his own Superman. Just like Tyler, how do you pronounce, is it Holkin? I'm never sure how you pronounce his last name. But anyway, just like they brought their own Superman for Superman and Lois. just like Brandon Routh made his own, just like Henry Cavill and Zack Snyder had their own Superman. I think it's really important that they have that. And if they can bring a little bit, because you're never going to have all of Christopher Reeve's charm, but if you can, if you do that and you can capture a little bit of that Christopher Reeve charm at the same time, I think that could go very well for them. I think it can go very well for them. So we'll see. All right. Thanks for that, Big Mouth Stan. Next up, we've got Dwayne, who writes, just saw that Dune is an official member. Congrats. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what he is necessarily talking about right now, you guys know that my wife and I, a couple of months ago, found a dog on the street that had been hit by a car and was abandoned, had no collar, no chip, clearly had been on the street for a long time, was underweight, all that bad stuff. And that dog's name is Dune. And yeah, there's Dune. So Anne and I, so that Shadow curled up in the bed. That's our dog that we've had for many, many years, like 15 years we've had Shadow. And we found Dune on the street, and Anne called me, said, I'm down by the golf course. There's this dog on the street, and I'm afraid it's going to wander into the street and get hit. Can you come down and meet me? So I went down, and we coaxed her in. Anne had some fried chicken that she had picked up on the way home. So we used some fried chicken to coax her over to us. I picked her up, put her in the car. We took her to the vets. The vet confirmed that she had been hit by a car at some point and that her hip hadn't healed right and it was causing her problems. We got her spayed. We got her vaccinations. We took her home. We fed her. We took care of her. And then we started the process of trying to find somebody to adopt her. And we took her to the groomers, and the groomers fell in love with her and offered to adopt her. We took her to the vet, and one of the girls at the vet said, I'll adopt this dog. And so we just wanted to get Dune a little healthier, get her to put some weight on and all that kind of stuff. And then when it came down to time for us to let her go, because we had somebody lined up to adopt Dune, and Anne and I had both become very attached to Dune, and Dune had become very attached to us. Anne decided she couldn't part with her. And so Dune is now officially a member of our family. As you can probably tell by looking at Dune, Dune is half Rottweiler, half Husky. You can totally see the Husky in her face and in the bushy tail. So she's half Rottweiler, half Husky, and she is the most loving, sweet, amazing dog I've ever seen. And she is obsessed with Shadow. She is absolutely obsessed with Shadow. She loves Shadow, will follow Shadow everywhere she goes. And so some people asking, why did we name her Dune? Well, the reason we named her Dune is because the night that we found her and brought her home, we were watching the first episode of the new show Dune Sisterhood. Was it called Dune Sisterhood, or was it, what was the name of the new Dune show? Dune, was it Sisterhood? No, it was Dunes. Anyway, I can't remember the name of the show now, but we brought her home, and that's the show we were watching. So we're like, okay, let's name her Dune. Dune Prophecy. Thank you, Hayden. Hayden in the live chat said Dune Prophecy. So that's why her name is Dune, and Dune is now officially a part of our family. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. And she's a good girl, and we really love having her. All right, let's keep going here. Next up, we've got Gannon, who writes, sadly, I think Denis will miss tomorrow for director. Yeah. I mean, that's the way the tea leaves are going. And it is absolutely ridiculous. This is clearly, as Jonathan points out, this is clearly an instance of recency bias. Dune 2 was originally supposed to come out in Oscar season of 2023. And then it would have won all the Oscars. But because of the strikes, they had to push the release date to early 2024. Months and 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 months separated from the Oscar season. And in that time, people have just seemed to have forgotten about it. And instead, they're talking about a stupid ass movie like Emilia Perez. That's a stupid ass movie. Stupid movie. Great themes, great topics, not handled well. It's not a good movie. I don't think it's the worst movie of the year. It doesn't deserve Razzie nominations or anything like that, but not a good movie. But hey, it's more recent than Dune 2. And yes, unfortunately, I think you're right. I don't think Denis is going to get one of the Best Director nominations. Totally deserves it. Should totally win. But I don't think he's going to get nominated. And that really sucks. Really, really sucks. Anyway. All right. Next up. We've got Lee Crow, who writes in. I'd like to throw my hat in the ring too. I'm not an actor or trying to be. I'm not a superhero shape and I'm in no way prepared, but I would also like to play Batman in Brave and the Bold. Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I've actually seen a couple of articles of so-and-so would like to play Batman. It's like, I've never understood those stories. Okay. In general, I've never understood why people run with headlines. Actor says they would love to play a big, high-profile, well-paying role. Really? Kel Supri. I mean, it's... Oh, so now, where it does become interesting to me is when it's a story about like an upper A-list actor. And it's usually not an upper A-list actor. It's usually a B-list or low-level A-list. But I mean, it's interesting to me when it's an upper A-list actor who literally has their choice of any role they want to play. And then they say, I'd like to be in a Star Wars movie, or I would like to be in a superhero film. I'd like to be in a DC film. I would like to play Reed Richards. I would like to play Batman. See, then it's really interesting. But it's like a lot of times it's like, oh my God, in this one interview, this high B-level actor who's everybody recognizes their name, but you know, they're not an A-list, says they would love to play insert name of high profile, super popular, guaranteed high paying role. It's like, of course they do. Of course they do. Anyway. Always thought that was funny. Thanks for that, Lee. Appreciate that, man. All right. Next up, we've got Jerome, who writes in. Do you think we will see Superman or any of the other heroes who have a no-kill code in the comics killing anybody in the DCU? Whew. I mean, that's a good question. One of the big arguments I've always had with people, and I'm always in the minority, which is okay, being right is often lonely, is when people would argue that it's so wrong that Zack Snyder had Batman kill people. Do you know nothing about the history of the comics? Batman has killed many times in the comics. He has. As a matter of fact, I've brought this image and these graphics up on the show many times. There's this really infamous one where Batman is talking to Robin, the Jason Todd version of Robin. And like they're going like, oh no, we just can't go and assassinate these people. And Robin, Jason Todd says to him, but you've killed people. And Batman says, yes, but only in self-defense. Like we don't go out specifically to assassinate people, but you know, if we have to defend ourselves, and you know, I've killed people in self-defense and we'll continue to kill people in self-defense, right? That's canon, folks. That's canon. You can argue with me all you want, but you're not arguing with me. You're arguing with the comics. That's the canon of the comics. Now, it is also true, while that is true, it is also true that in recent years, a lot of the writers have leaned more into Batman having a no-kill code and making that more and more a prominent thing about him in recent years. But even then, it's a cop-out. Because even in the pages of those comics where they say Batman has an absolute unwavering no-kill code, they have Batman do things to characters that would kill them, but the writers just say, oh no, but they survived that. No. What Batman just did to that guy in that panel on that page, that guy would not have survived. The writers just use it as a cop-out, say, no. Batman knew exactly how to throw him from the third story of the building and have him land on concrete in just the right way that would only shatter his femur, break 7 bones, crack his spine, yes, but knew he would live. See, it's a cop-out. It's just a total cop-out. But it is an important theme in more modern versions of Batman and Superman, which is part of the reason why when, Superman killed Zod in Man of Steel, it was a very big deal to Superman. Like Superman, he didn't want to kill Zod. He screamed out in agony after having to kill Zod, but he had to kill Zod. It was either kill Zod or Zod was going to kill millions of people and there was no stopping him. So there was that. Anyway. I just saw Noise something says, like the skit, they are just sleeping. Yeah, that's right. They let Batman do all these crazy things to these people, say, no, but he didn't kill them. They're just sleeping. They're just sleeping. Anyway, back to the question of, do I think James Gunn will have certain characters that prominently have no kill codes, at least in recent years, have no kill codes, have them actually kill? I think yes. But it'll be infrequent and it will come at a heavy price. Like, I don't think you're going to see Batman in Brave and the Bold walk into a 7-Eleven to grab a Slurpee and see some kid shoplifting a Twinkie. Do they even still sell Twinkies? I don't know. Shoplifting a Reese's peanut butter cup and have Batman go, "You shouldn't have done that, son." And he pulls out a batarang and stabs him through the liver and rips it up, spilling his intestines out on the floor. Crime doesn't pay. Like, I don't think James Gunn is going to have Batman just shanking people for nothing all over a Twinkie. I don't think we're going to see that. I think, though, that if we do find Batman in a situation where it's an either kill or be killed scenario and he kills somebody, I think what James Gunn will do is kind of what Zack Snyder did, which was make it have an emotional price that has to be paid. Make it something that is super serious. So I'm just reading some of the comments you guys are writing in there. Make it be a super serious moment. Make it be something that is going to weigh heavy on that character and something that the character would have wanted to avoid at almost any cost. So yeah, do I think we might see James Gunn have a character that we might think has no kill code? Kill a fool? Yeah, maybe. But if so, it will be handled with a heaviness and a seriousness, I think. Or this DCU version of Batman can just be Peacemaker. That guy's jaywalking. Shank right through the spine. It's like, you won't be jaywalking anymore. Ha ha. Like, I don't know. Yeah. But I don't think James Gunn's going to do that. I don't think he's going to do that. All right. Next up. How do we move on from that? I'm not sure. Next up, we go to 00 Buggy, who writes, one of two. Hey, John. I just realized that each of the heroes James added in the Superman represent different aspects and powers of the DC universe. Green Lantern is for space and power object, ring. Hawkgirl is magic and magic abilities, mace, and Mr. Terrific science and no powers / weapons. You know, I hadn't really thought about that, but I mean, it's true. That is James Gunn making sure what in the sports world, it would be called putting together a balanced lineup, right? Putting together a balanced lineup. Just like if you're playing like something like a World of Warcraft or something like that, where you need a tank, you need a healer, you need, stuff like that. You need a DPS character, all that kind of stuff. You need a balance for your party. I think James Gunn, I think you're right. I think your observation is right on the point there, that James Gunn put together a lineup of characters that were all very, very unique from each other. And not only unique in terms of power sets and abilities, but probably also very, very unique from in terms of personality. So each character, I think, is going to be very, very distinct in this film. So at least that's what it looks like on the surface. So I think your observation's right on the money there, Buggy. All right, next up. SC writes, if Superman goes wrong, do you think Warner Brothers will cancel the entire DCU, or they still will go ahead with the rest of the movies? All right, I've been asked this question before, and I'm going to give the same answer. If Superman, one of the reasons, not the only one, but one of the reasons that the DCEU failed was because they were overreactionary. They never stuck to the plan. They would put out one movie, something would go wrong, they would panic in the boardroom, make major changes and shifts in directions. We heard about it almost in between every film they did. And they were constantly reacting. And again, to use a sports terminology, you make up a plan, a game plan for a game. And if you go out there and your running back fumbles the first ball, do you just give up on the game plan, panic, and say, we got to go back to the drawing board? No, you stick to the plan. If Superman doesn't connect, like we said earlier in the broadcast tonight, it's bad, and it sets this brand new DCU even further back than they are already. And it's going to make the job of establishing itself 3 times harder. But the difference between the AT&T owned Warner Brothers, which is a totally different ownership group, and the today Warner Brothers is, they are going to stick to their plan. They have spent years putting a plan together. Not every MCU movie knocked it out of the park. But they stuck to their plan. When they would hit a road bump, they stuck to the plan. And maybe the first one is the film that doesn't go as planned. And the first film is the one that hits the road bump. Okay, it's just one film. It's an important film, massive repercussions if it goes badly, but it's still one film. My belief, and I feel really, really strongly about this because I've heard them talk about it, is if this one film goes bad, they will do the smart thing and stick to the plan. Now, if you get 3 or 4 projects in and it's clear that the plan itself is the problem. Like if it's just one film, the plan may be good, but we thought we had a good movie on our hands and it didn't work. Okay, stick to the plan. But if they get 3 or 4 movies into it and they start realizing, listen, this isn't working. The plan itself isn't working. We're not able to execute, period. Then you gather the forces together, go back to the drawing board, change directions, pivot, make an adjustment, and move on. But you don't do that after one film. That's one of the big reasons the DCEU failed. Is they spent so much time in panic mode, so much time being reactionary, and not just believing in the plan, that it bit them in the ass a lot. And it's one of the reasons why the DCEU, I should say, failed to ever really put together a real identity. Now, listen, I'm not one of these people who's saying that, if they had just left Zack Snyder alone. No, I'm a big fan of all the Zack Snyder DCEU films. But it's not like people were loving those films anyway. Like, everybody forgets that half the people hated Man of Steel. I don't understand that. Man of Steel's awesome. It's one of the best comic book movies. It's the most underrated comic book movie of all time. But the reality is not everybody shared my opinion. Half the audience, half the critics hated it. And then the same was true of all the films after that. So it's not just that. But again, I truly believe that if Superman falls on its face, it's unfortunate. It's going to set them back. But they're going to pick themselves up and stick to the plan until it becomes clear that the plan itself doesn't work. Other than that, no, they're not going to be reaction. And here's the other thing. The opposite is also true. If Superman comes out and is a $1.5 billion film, which it won't be, but if it does, if Superman comes out, $1.5 billion film, gets a couple of Oscar nominations even, they still won't change the plan. They won't go, oh my God, this worked. Okay, scrap Batman and the Bold and scrap Supergirl, go right into production on Superman 2 and start writing the Superdog spinoff movie. Let's start putting together a Lex Luthor HBO series. That wasn't part of the plan. I know, but look how successful it was. We got to pivot. Like, they're not going to panic and crash the plan if Superman doesn't work, and they're not going to overreact to a huge success of Superman and pivot away from the plan either. After one film, big hit or big fail, they're going to stick to the plan. Unless they haven't learned any of the lessons that the failure of AT&T's Warner Brothers gave us. So I think they're going to stick to the plan. All right. Thanks for that, SC. Appreciate that, man. All right. Let's see. Next up, Sam writes, how would you feel if Ultraman turns out to be a Superman clone created by Lex, and that's supposed to be a big twist? I know the movie's not out. It depends on how it's handled, but in general, how would you feel? Well, I mean, you just said it though, Sam, right? Like, it would all depend on how the twist is set up. Having Ultraman, which isn't, there's a lot of different ways you could approach Ultraman, because there's different sort of, like, he's another dimensions version of Superman. Maybe he's a clone of Superman. A lot of different ways you could kind of handle that, right? But let's say that's what he ends up being. That could be a great thing or a terrible thing, depending on how the movie sets it up. If the movie is structured in such a way and the story flows in such a way that Ultraman ends up being a clone of Superman that Lex Luthor created in secret, then it could be amazing. But if the story flow goes a different way and the movie is structured a different way, then all of a sudden hitting that twist might feel lame. So it really all depends on how the movie itself is set up and how it builds up to that moment. Now, listen. Ultraman, I think it's clear Ultraman is going to be some kind of version of Superman. Whether it's a clone of Superman, whether it's Superman from another universe, which has been done, whether it's something along those lines. He's, I think, in some way, shape, or form, because we see him going toe-to-toe with Superman in the trailer. Not many people can do that. So I think he will be. But whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's really going to depend on how it's built. Like Luis is saying in live chat, like, what if it's Superboy? Well, even if it's like Superboy, like another whatever, that is still in a way a version of Superman. So they could do it, you know, a version of Superman from another dimension, a version of Superman that's a younger sort of iteration, like a Superboy, could be as like his clone, a lot of different ways, but he's probably going to end up being some iteration of Superman. And it could be good or bad. How do I feel about it? Fine. I mean, I think that's a perfectly good story hook to use. It can work, but it can also fail. It all depends, like you said yourself, Sam, it all depends on how they structure it and build up to it within the movie itself. It can be great. It could be bad. So we'll see. And like Jose Maya said, I've been hearing people all over the place saying this exact same thing. What if Ultraman is being played by Henry Cavill? That's the big thing going around online right now. What if Ultraman is being played by Henry Cavill? They won't do that. I don't think James Gunn would do that. I don't think Henry Cavill would do that. It would be one of those things where if they suddenly pulled the mask off and it's Henry Cavill is Ultraman, it would be one of those situations where the novelty ruins the movie. It's where the novelty will pull everybody out of the movie. That the shtick just takes all attention away from the movie. And it's like, oh my God, it's Henry Cavill. It's like, so I don't think it would be a good thing. And I say this as a major Henry Cavill fan. I don't think it would be a good thing for them to do. But, you know, that's just me. All right. Next up, we have Isaac, who writes, "Hey, John, I had a fun weekend with my mom last week. Nice. We went to visit Galveston, Texas to see big mansions, and we watched The Goonies in theaters." First of all, I kind of regret that I didn't go to see The Goonies in theaters again. It wasn't high on my priority list. But, you know, one of the things that would always make me so mad, you're talking about houses in Texas, right? Ann and I are kind of suckers for watching like home improvement shows. I'll admit it. I admit it. I'm a Chip and Joanna Gaines fan. I liked Fixer Upper. I liked watching that show. But here's the thing that always got me about that. Because I live in the LA area. And I don't know if you've heard, but houses in the LA area are very, very expensive. I remember when Ann and I first decided a few years ago that we were going to start looking for a house. I'm not exaggerating. Ask anybody who lives in the LA, LA area. This is 100% true. Ann and I were looking for a house, and the best we could find was like a 1-bedroom, 850, 900 square foot house that still needed a lot of work and would need a lot of work on it. $800,000. $850,000. And every time we thought we would find a place that we would want to get, I still remember we found this one house and we thought, okay, this one's okay. This house is all right. It was actually a 2-bedroom house, had 2 bedrooms, and it was like 1,000 square feet and needed a lot of work. And we put in a bid for $800,000, even though $800,000 was not really something we could afford. But it's like we couldn't find anything to buy. And then we put in the bid, and then our agent gets back in touch with us and saying, okay, it's down between you and one other couple. They want your best offer. And like our real estate agent was saying 900,000 could do it. And I'm like, dude, I can't even, it was a mistake that we put in an offer for 8. I can't afford that. No, we're not doing it we're not putting in 9. And sure enough, the other couple put in an offer for 900,000 and they got this crappy little house. So anyway, I say all that because Ann and I, in the midst of all this, right? Of Ann and I going around and trying to find a house to buy and like getting these little 800 square foot for $800,000, like nonsense. We'd sit down and watch Fixer Upper or something like that. And Chip and Joanna Gaines would like take a couple to see a couple houses. All right. I'm doing a terrible Chip impersonation, so forgive me. All right here, folks. So what we got here is this 4-bedroom, 3,100 square foot on a 1.5 acre lot. And the asking price is $275,000. And I would be like, fuck you. Fuck you. I'd be like so mad at the idea of these anyway, the idea that these houses, these mansions descended from heaven were like a third of the price of a piece of crap shack that we were looking at. It was like, I would get so mad and like throw pillows at the TV. It's like, oh my God. I remember this one time we were watching it. I know nobody cares about this. I'm sorry. I'm just rambling. Forgive me. But I remember this one episode, they were like, all right, now, so we found this property. It's on a lake, and it was like gorgeous, like overlooking a lake and all this kind of stuff. It's like 5 bedrooms, 4,200 square feet, blah, 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 like $500,000. And I'd be like, oh my God, honey, let's move to Austin. I mean, that show took place in Waco, Texas. Yeah, I think that's where the Chip and Joanna Gaines thing, their business is centered in Waco, Texas. But I don't want to move to Waco. So I'm like, let's move to Austin, something like that. Now, Eventually, Ann and I decided to move outside of LA. That's why we're out in Riverside right now, which is about 45 minutes to an hour outside of LA. And we moved out here because we were able to find like a 1,500 square foot, 3-bedroom house with a pool, and we're on a golf course, and we got beautiful views of mountains and trees and sunsets and all that kind of stuff. And we were able to get that for like $500,000, which is still a lot, but it was so much cheaper. And we got so much more house by moving like 45 minutes to an hour outside of town. And we're super happy. We like living out here. But even now, even Ann is like with fires going on, and it's like Ann's even like, maybe we should look at moving to Vegas. Cause I was just out in Vegas doing some business stuff, and man, the houses you can get in Vegas are so much cheaper than what I can buy out here. Anyway, Dr. Stinky is asking, how close are you to the fires? Are you safe? Yeah, we're safe. We're a good 45 minutes away from the closest fire that was going on. So we're in a good spot. Although, let me see if I can find this. So I'm out in Vegas yesterday during the day, and out of nowhere, I get, I'm going to see if I can bring it up on screen here. I don't think I can get it on screen. No, but I wish I could get this on screen. How do I get this on screen? Let me see if there's some way I can get it on screen. Hold on a second. Because I got to show this to you because it freaked me out. Is it in my downloads? It's not. I don't think it's in my downloads. Nope, it's not in my downloads. I'm trying to download this thing and I can't get it. Anyway, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a screenshot of it. Just guys, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So I'm in Vegas and I'm literally sitting in a meeting. Okay. Literally sitting in a meeting. And my text message thing goes off. And I look at it. And Ann is texting me this. That's the view from our backyard. And she sends me this picture, and like this smoke is coming up over the hill. And my first reaction is panic, man, especially with everything that's been going on. My first reaction is panic. Now, then I looked at the picture a little more closely, and I'm like, that doesn't look like wood burning. That looks like a car fire. Because I've driven by enough on the highways and stuff like that. I've driven by enough car fires to recognize it, right? So I looked and said, that looks like a car fire. That looks like oil and rubber and stuff like that burning. And then Jonathan took a look because Jonathan was in the house here. He was in the studio. He ran out to take a look. He goes, yeah, that's a car that's on fire. And so sure enough, about 10 minutes after I got this picture, the smoke stopped, and it was a car fire, and the fire department put it out. But man, I'll tell you what, for a minute there, I was like panicking because I was in Vegas. I couldn't even be here to get Ann or the dogs out or anything like that. So turns out it was nothing. So I was very, very, very happy to see that. Anyway. All right. We keep going here. Next up, we've got Nelson, who writes, 2 Batmans or Pattinson in DCU. No, guys, can people stop this? Robert Pattinson's Batman is not going to be the Batman of the DCU, okay? It's completely separate. It is not the DCU. They've been abundantly clear about it. The director of Brave and the Bold has been very clear it's not. James Gunn has been very clear that that universe that Matt Reeves created would not fit in to a cinematic universe where there's magical women with golden lassos and aliens who fly in the sky and shoot laser beams out of their eyes. That doesn't fit with the world that Matt Reeves has created. That wouldn't fit in the world of Penguin or that. So no, absolutely 100% no. No 1,000 times that Robert Pattinson is not going to be the Batman in the DCU. They've made it abundantly clear. So we're going to have two different Batman, and that's perfectly fine. You know, everybody said, oh, it's going to confuse audiences. No, it's not. Audiences are going to look at it. Here's the height of the confusion. Oh, wait a minute. I thought Robert Pattinson was Batman. Oh, he is, but that's like a separate thing from this thing that's going on. Oh, okay. That's the extent of the confusion. There's going to be no more confusion about that. No one is going to be sitting at home when the first commercial comes on for Batman Brave and the Bold and it's some other actor. I don't know, just for argument's sake, say it's Alan Ritchson or something like that, right? There ain't going to be anybody sitting at home going, oh, wait a minute, I don't understand. I don't understand. I thought Twilight Boy was bad. I thought Robert Pattinson was bad. I don't know what I'm going to do. No one is going to do that. At most, it's going to be, wait a minute, I thought Robert Pattinson was Batman. Oh, yeah, he is, but that's like a totally separate thing than this. Kind of like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker was totally separate thing. Oh, okay. That's it. That's the extent of the confusion. Anyway, so yeah, two Batmen, and it's perfectly good, and it's perfectly fine that we're going to have them. All right. Let's see. Next up, SC writes, do you consider Christopher Nolan to be one of the all-time greats along with Spielberg, Scorsese, and Kubrick, etc.? No. Now, ask me that question again in 10 years. In 10 years, may have a very different answer. But when you look at the filmography of, like, say, Steven Spielberg, we're literally talking about dozens of the all-time great classic films. You're literally talking about, I could be mistaken, but I think like 10 of Steven Spielberg's films have been nominated for Best Picture. I think. It's something around there. I might be off by one or two, but it's something along those lines. Like literally some of the most memorable, iconic, classic films ever made are Steven Spielberg films. Christopher Nolan has the potential to get to that point. I believe that. I believe he can get there. But Christopher Nolan, because like, what is he, like 55? Something like that? Hold on a second. Let me just bring this up. How old is Christopher Nolan? He's 54. The dude is, give him like 20 more years. So like, can he get there? Absolutely. Do I think he's there already with the size of filmography that he has? Like, can you put him up there with a Scorsese and a Spielberg? No, I don't think so. Not yet. Not yet. Because he's still super young. So give him time. Give him time. If he makes like 5 more movies that all get nominated for Best Picture and he gets a few more Best Director nominations, then we can start having that conversation. Otherwise, I think it's just recency bias. He is fabulous. He's one of those directors that whenever he's making a new movie, it gets our attention. We get excited about. But it's kind of like this. It's kind of like talking about a guy who's in his 6th season in the league and asking, oh, is this guy as good as Michael Jordan? Is this guy? Well, wait a minute. Just let the guy have his career first, and then let's talk about that. So it's a little, I think it's premature. Does he have the potential? Yes. But as of right now at this moment, no. He's not nobody right now. Denis Villeneuve isn't. Christopher Nolan isn't. I don't think anybody is right now, is in that conversation quite yet. But Denis and Christopher Nolan are very young. So give them time. Let them build up their filmographies. And then at some point, we may be having that conversation. But right now, I think it's a little bit too early for it. But that's just my take on it at any rate. All right. Next up, we got Jake who writes, I appreciate your point about Gunn needing to not be too inside baseball. While I love Deadpool and Wolverine, my friends who aren't nerds like us here felt that they got left behind with that film. Really? I mean, my interpretation of it was that I felt it was all laid out in such a way that everybody would understand it. I thought they did it in such a way that everybody would understand it. Again, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I guess, yeah, some of the jokes were very much inside baseball. Some of the jokes were. But the basic premise of it was very clear and very simple, right? And I think James Gunn can do that too. I think you can have, as long as you have a storyline that isn't contingent upon the audience knowing all the lore, as long as you have that the audience can follow along with, I think it's perfectly fine to here and there drop in some lines, some Easter eggs, some things that people with more inside baseball knowledge would appreciate and get. I think that's perfectly fine, as long as the whole premise of your story isn't contingent upon that. And as long as he's able to avoid that, I think he'll do okay, Jake. I think they'll do fine. Anyway, good question, man. Appreciate that. All right. Next up, Artificially Stupid Intelligence writes, Gunn said the video games will be in the DCU. Can he make it work since the last couple of DC games were bad? The Arkham games were the height. No, I don't think he can make it work. I honestly don't. I've talked about this on the show before, but listen, God bless James Gunn, because I love James Gunn. Everybody knows this. But this whole notion, I remember I brought up when he first said that, even the video games are going to be canon and tied into the DCU. You know who else said that? Star Wars. Remember that? When Disney first took over Star Wars, they made that big grand pronouncement. From now on, everything is going to be canon. The books are going to be canon. The new comics are going to be canon. The video games are going to be canon. The movies, obviously, are going to be canon. The TV shows are going to be canon. From now on, everything. And I remember, I was working at AMC at the time, and I remember saying on AMC Movie Talk, this ain't going to work. It's not going to work. Great intentions. God bless you for wanting to do that, but there is no way you're going to be able to keep all of this untangled. No way. And you know what? It only took 2 years before, wait a minute. In this novel, you said this, but that contradicts what's happened here. And then finally, at one point, I think it was Pablo Hidalgo, who God bless Pablo Hidalgo, but I think it was Pablo Hidalgo when one of the fans brought up one of the contradictions in social media on a social media. I think it might've been on Twitter. And but then Pablo said, well, if something is happening in a book, it's canon. Unless it contradicts something else in canon, then it's not canon. Well, something's either canon or it's not. A girl isn't kind of pregnant. She's either pregnant or she's not pregnant. You're not sort of pregnant. Something's canon or it's not canon. Right? I mean, so God bless them that they had the intention of trying to make one complete ecosystem that was all interconnected and perfectly consistent with each other and all canon. God bless you. But I said from the moment they announced that with Star Wars, I said, it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. And it hasn't. Hasn't worked. So again, I would say God bless James Gunn for saying we're going to make this and the games are going to tie in and this is going to tie in. Okay. It's not going to work. At some point, probably in just the next couple of years, they're going to give up on that idea and just let the video games be the video games. And hey, you can make a video game that ties into the movies. You can do that. But to say this all-encompassing every video game that gets produced and every novel we produce and every, comic we put out and every TV show we make and every movie, it's all going to be perfectly interconnected. It ain't going to work. You're not going to be able to do it. God bless your heart for wanting to try, but it ain't going to work. And it's not going to work here either. And at some point, again, I think in the next couple of years, they're just going to abandon that. And you say, okay, the movies have to be canon with itself, maybe even the HBO series. But after that, the games, novelizations, whatever, they won't have to. And so they'll figure that out and they'll abandon it at some point. All right. Next up. By the way, guys, I'm going to be turning off super chats here. So if you do have a last second thing to throw in, go ahead and do that. But I'm going to be turning off super chats here in just a second because we have been going for over an hour and a half already. All right. Next up is Devin Lida, who writes, Speaking of Sonic, who's more likely to voice Amy? Mikey Madison from Anora or Margot Qualley? Who cares? I don't care. I really don't. Listen, you have to understand my basic, motivating assumption here is that I have never felt like the best thing to do for your voice cast is to go out and get famous live action actors. There are people like our own Chris Carr, and this is the way animated movies used to do it, who dedicate themselves exclusively to practicing and perfecting the art of voice performance. Not live action performance, voice performance. And granted, the last bunch of years, we now all just know that when an animated movie's coming out, they go out and get some big famous people to be in it, when that doesn't help the movie at all. Now, there are some rare occasions where it has become like a real thing. Tom Hanks as Woody, Michael Myers as Shrek. By extension, that Eddie Murphy as Donkey. Okay, yeah, but 9 times out of 10, I feel like, first of all, it doesn't really help the animated movies. And 9 times out of 10, I think an animated movie would have benefited by, instead of going out and just getting a famous person to step into a sound booth and record some lines, go and get a lifelong trained, dedicated to the craft voice performer to come in and do that. And that's what I think they should do. Now, listen, I love that they went on and got Keanu Reeves to be Shadow, because I love Keanu Reeves, good Canadian kid. Love him. But don't you think that maybe Shadow may have come across even a bit better if they went out and got an actor who has just dedicated the last 20 years of their lives to just the expressive nature of the vocal performance and is a professional voice actor? Don't you think it maybe would have been a little bit better? Maybe not as good for the marketing, but again, this movie didn't blow the doors off box office wise. It did very well, but so did the other Sonic movies. So I would say myself, my vote is go out and get somebody who is a trained professional voice actor. Don't worry about some hot name or some famous person, because they won't do 90% chance they won't do as good of a job as somebody who has just dedicated themselves to just the art of the vocal performance. I just think you're going to get a better performance that way for an animated film. That's just me. I felt that way for a long time. So, yeah. Anyway. All right. We keep going here. How far down am I? Okay, there we are. Okay. So we go on to Jaden Voss, but thanks for sending in the question, Devin. Appreciate it. We go on to Jaden Voss, who writes, "Hey, John, I just wanted to tell you about my dream movie, a murder mystery whodunit movie, but it's set during a zombie apocalypse." That could be interesting. I mean, listen, there's certainly like Train to Busan, Shaun of the Dead, early seasons of Walking Dead. I mean, there's definitely zombie stuff that I love, but to me, the zombie genre is very, and Last of Us is amazing. I mean, I know they're not zombies, but it's very much a zombie genre, and they're all basically the same. If you could mix in something like that, like cross genre something, just kind of like Shaun of the Dead was a rom-com zom, right? A romantic comedy with zombies is the way Edgar Wright describes it. A rom-com zom. If you could cross genres like that and have a zombie movie that is the background of a murder mystery whodunit, that's kind of, I think, what they're doing with the Lanterns thing. I think that could be pretty good. I'd be down for that, Jaden. Depending on who the filmmaker was and all that kind of stuff, I'd be down for it. All right. Next up, we got Chris S., who writes, "I was thinking about Chris Pratt visiting DC Studios," because that actually happened. There were pictures that went around on the internet of Chris Pratt visiting the set of Superman. And I was wondering, is he an actor that you think can make the switch to playing a villain? I don't think I've ever seen him in that type of a role. That's a good question. I'm going to say yes. I think he can. And I think it would be fun. Like, One of the big hot films is going to be one of the Oscar favorites is Conclave, which is amazing. It's so good. And one of the guys in the movie is Jonathan Lithgow, right? Who is, of course, also great as the Trinity Killer and Dexter and all that kind of stuff. And today, when a lot of people think of Jonathan Lithgow, they think of a guy who can be this menacing villain, right? But when Jonathan Lithgow played his first villain, everybody forgets that this is Harry and the Hendersons, dude. I mean, Jonathan Lithgow kind of made his bones by being this sweet, sweetheart of a guy. And then I think the movie was Sylvester Stallone's cliffhanger. At least that's the one I remember. That's the first one I think where it's like Jonathan Lithgow, the Harry and the Hendersons guy, is the villain? What? And it just kind of elevated him, right? To me, it completely elevated him in his career. So I think Chris Pratt trying a villain turn would be very interesting. I hated that what was that stupid Netflix movie that Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans did? What was it called? Guys, help me out in the live chat. Total piece of garbage movie. But what was it called? Red Man? No. A dipshit. Gray Man. That's what it was called. Gray Man was the name of the movie, right? Okay. That movie was garbage, like total, like not as bad as Craven or anything, but I mean, it was a total garbage movie, but it was really fun seeing Chris Evans play like a psychotic bad guy. Because we haven't really seen him in that. I mean, yeah, he's like, what was that teen movie he was in where he's a bad guy? He was kind of a bad guy in Knives Out. But most of the movie, we think he's a good guy. It's not till the very end that he's the bad guy. You know what I mean? But I thought it was really fun seeing him play a big bad guy. And I think that could be really good for Chris Pratt's career. I mean, his career is perfectly fine right now, but I think that would be really good for him. I would be interested in seeing him do that. All right. Next up, we got Jerome who writes, if the DCU is successful, do you think they will do a movie with an all-black cast? And which black hero would you want to see get that movie? Well, I mean, listen, I don't think they'll do a movie with an all black cast any more than I think they'll do a movie with an all white cast. That's just not the world we live in. So I don't think they'll do that. But could they do like, say, something where that is predominantly black? Absolutely they could. Why not? You find success when you tell different stories from different perspectives and not always just tell the same story from the same perspective, right? It works if you make the movie good, right? If you make the movie good. Like, it's great that they made Black Panther, but if it was garbage, it doesn't work, right? But they have shown that if you can tell good stories that reflect different corners of the world we live in, then that's a good thing. That mixes it up. And 100% they will. 100% they will. And then the key is not going to be whether it's an Asian focused movie or a black focused movie or a whatever focused movie. That's not going to be the key. The key will be, was the movie good? Was the movie good? That's why a Barbie can be the biggest box office film of the year. That's why Black Panther made billions of dollars. You got to make the movie good, and that ultimately would be the test for them. All right. Next up. Let's see. Luis writes, hey, John, I want to get into more sci-fi TV shows. Do you have any recommendations? Well, everybody knows the first thing I'm going to say. Robert D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica. Greatest sci-fi show of all time. Forget that. It's the greatest show of all time, period. In my opinion, it is the greatest show ever made. It's amazing. And so if you're looking for some good sci-fi to get into, there's that one. Let's see. What would be another good sci-fi TV show? You know what? It's an older one and it's going to feel kind of dated, but the story itself is so good. Babylon 5. Again, it's going to feel dated because of the technology and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely it will, but just from a visual effects and a production standpoint. But the story is so good and the lore is so good. Babylon 5 would be another really good one for you to check out. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got Eric Escato writes, John, I recently asked about my fan casting of David Morse as Jim Gordon. I was pleasantly surprised to learn how you highly think of David Morse as an actor. I also think he's severely underrated. Listen, I've been talking about David Morse for years. I think he is a top 5 most underrated actor. Like, he's one of those guys that when he appears in something, everybody recognizes the face and ain't nobody knows his name, which is really unfortunate. And the dude's killer. Whether he's in 12 Monkeys, whether he's in The Rock, whether he's in, I mean, he even had his own Equalizer TV show. He's amazing. And he was even the bad guy. What was that Shia LaBeouf film that he was in where he was the bad guy neighbor? Why am I freezing on the name of that Shia? Guys in the live chat, what was the name of that Shia LaBeouf movie? You guys will come up with it. And David was like the bad guy across the street. Disturbia. Thank you, David D. David D was the first guy to come up with it. Disturbia. Like, he's money. He'll just deliver. If you need any kind of a character in your movie that roughly fits his age range and everything right now, put him in it because he'll elevate your film. He's really, really good. I've always really appreciated him a lot. I've talked about him for years. All right. Let's see. Next up, Nick Schmidt writes, what if the tables turned and David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnan were cast as Cyclops and Jean Grey? Thoughts? X actor and X role, as long as they're good performers. I mean, listen, Rachel is so good. Like, she's won multiple awards. She's amazing. I really think you can put her in just about anything. Now, again, I think she might be a little aged out for a Jean Grey right now because I think they're doing Jean Grey a little bit younger with the new X-Men, as opposed to like fully adult. Whatever. So I might be right about that. I might be wrong about that. But I mean, you could put her in anything. As far as David Cornsweet, like I said, my only exposure to him so far is Hollywood and Twisters. And that's not enough for me to say whether I think he'd be a good fit for a Cyclops. But again, at the end of the day, all that matters is, are you picking good actors? And as long as you are, totally works for me. All right. Next up, we've got, it's Trey Davis who writes, how does Godzilla stand in the middle of the ocean? Well, I'm glad you asked. I've done a lot of research on this, and I actually traveled to Japan, talked to some significant Godzilla historians, went to school to study Japanese monster mythology. And I can tell you definitively that there are 2 ways Godzilla stands up in the middle of the ocean. Number one is he just knows how to find peaks. Because just like on dry land, there are underwater mountains. And see, Godzilla just knows where to find those, and he can stand on top of them. And Godzilla is very tall. Godzilla is very tall. It's not like he has to find, 10-foot deep water. As long as he finds something that's like 200 feet deep, he can stand. Now, the other way that he stands is just like in cartoons, Godzilla spins his tail like at 1,000 miles per hour, like a little propeller on a motorboat. And it makes it look like he's standing in the water, just like in a cartoon. So yes, the answer is I have no idea. It's just one of those things. They need Godzilla to stand, so he stands. Fine. That's fine. But I like to think in my head that his little tail going, just like in the Flintstones or something, and it makes it look like he's standing up when really his little tail under the water is spinning like a propeller. That's how I see it. And that's my headcanon. That's my headcanon. All right. Next up, Jerome writes, why did Landman come off as preachy to you? Because it's an incredibly preachy show. It's an overtly preachy show. It really is. I love it. I mean, I love the show. I think it's great. I don't think it's as good as Yellowstone per se. Like I still think that is Taylor Sheridan's like crown jewel is Yellowstone. But I think Landman's really good, but I feel like they can never get through one episode of Landman without Tommy like being the absolute know-it-all and like putting everybody in their place who doesn't agree with the oil business. And he's basically in Landman. And again, I'm saying this is somebody who loves the show. I like it a lot, but he's basically given the same speech 3 or 4 times in the show. You know, if you don't like it, start riding a bike and blah, blah, like, and it's amazingly preachy. And I hate TV shows and movies that get, I don't mind TV shows and movies that have messages. Every piece of art has a message to it. That's fine. But I hate TV shows and movies that get overtly preachy. And that's my one knock on Landman. And again, I watched that show. I just dove right into it. I plowed through all the episodes. I really enjoy the show, but my one knock on it is that it is also, it's very preachy. It's very preachy. And again, especially since, like I said, Tommy ends up giving the exact same speech, just with different words, like 3 or 4 different times in the series. And that got a little tiring, but again, other than that, even the B storylines with Monty, with John Hamm and Demi Moore and stuff like that. I love the characters, like the lawyer and the redneck guy that he lives in the house with. I'm kind of over the daughter and the wife storylines. Like, I don't really care about that. Okay, they take old folks to a strip club. That's funny, but I'm kind of over that storyline a little bit. But it's been a really good show and I've enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, it is pretty preachy. It's pretty preachy. All right. Next up, we got Andy, who writes, Leonardo DiCaprio distanced himself from the 21st century after it turned 25. Andy writes, Elon Musk is thankful GI Robot doesn't exist right now. Yeah, well. G6 Sniper writes, the updated Williams score they made for the trailer was amazing. What do you think the odds are that they use it in the movie? Filled me with hope. I have no idea what you're talking about. What are you talking about, John Williams? And if so, are we talking about a Superman movie? Are we talking about a Star Wars movie? You got to tell me what movie we're talking about. For the sake of the discussion, I'm going to assume you're talking about the Superman movie, because that's what we've been talking about, is Superman most of today. So, yes. I think if we're talking about the Superman movie, I've been saying this for a while. I don't think they're going to straight up play the John Williams Superman theme. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just guessing. Okay. I'm just, as a fan, just guessing and speculating. That's all. But I don't think they're straight up going to be playing. I don't think they're going to do that. What I suspect they'll do is kind of what they did in Batman versus Superman, or in Justice League, where there'll be a scene with the music playing, and then within the music itself, you'll hear those iconic notes, kind of like an homage to that original classic. Yes, they used it in the trailer that way, but that's a piece of marketing, and that was really smart. It worked great. The effect was fantastic. But do I think they'll just straight up play that theme in the movie? No, I don't think so. Again, I might be wrong. I'm just guessing, but my guess is that they won't. My guess is that they'll, maybe sneak it in like a little homage in another piece of music, or maybe even play it during the end credits at some point. But I don't think they're just going to straight up use the John Williams score as the Superman theme for the movie. But again, that's just me guessing, purely guessing. All right. Let's see. Jerome writes, How do you think Black Panther 3 explains the multiverse for audiences who only watch the Black Panther movies, but not the rest of the MCU? I don't even think that's going to be an issue because I think the multiverse is going to be done by the time we get to Black Panther 3. And really, I mean, here's the thing, Jerome. How difficult is it to explain multiverse? Because multiverse really has no rules, which is one of the frustrating things about multiverse. Because within the MCU itself, in the multiverse saga, multiverse has been described and defined in like no less than 4 different separate ways that are not consistent with each other. So, but the basic idea of multiverse is not hard for anybody to understand. Oh, there's an alternate reality where this version, listen, they've been doing that since Star Trek. Remember in Star Trek, the original Star Trek series, for any of you who watched the reruns like I did, the mirror universe, right? The mirror universe. People understand that. See Mr. Spock with the goatee? Yeah, why's he got a goatee? That means he's the evil Dr. Spock. It's not a hard concept. Audiences have been living with multiverse ideas stuff for decades, my entire lifetime, your entire lifetime, right? It's not a hard concept on its most basic level. So you just tell an audience member, like, if they haven't followed everything else and they've only watched the Black Panther movies, well, if somebody's watching the Black Panther movies, they're probably watching other MCU stuff as well. Let's be honest here. It's the vast, vast, vast majority of people who are watching Black Panther are also watching other MCU movies. Maybe not all of them, but they're watching other MCU movies too. But if you do happen to come across somebody who has only watched the 2 Black Panther movies and that's it, well, you just go, well, they explained in in a few other MCU movies that there was an alternate reality where T'Challa was still alive and he came over to this reality. They were able to understand it in the 1960s when they did that with Star Trek. So I think they'll be able to understand it today. If they even do that at all. Again, like Black Panther 3 ain't going to come out until after Secret Wars. And remember, Secret Wars ends the multiverse saga. So they may not even have a multiverse thing that they even need to address by the time Black Panther 3 comes around, right? So, we'll see. We'll see. All right. Next up, we've got, where are we? We're at Double B Studio, who writes, DC versus Marvel first movie should be with Superman trapped in WandaVision's world. First of all, they should never do a DC versus Marvel movie ever. Anyway, trapped in a WandaVision's world and DC heroes trying to get him out. Marvel characters are afraid because turns out Superman's underwear has 2 Infinity Stones. Listen. I think people who've complained about Superman's costume are just complaining for the sake of complaining, because everything in Superman's costume is comic accurate from different versions. Like there's no one collage that looked exactly like that, but every piece of the Superman costume is kind of inspired by and taken from different eras of Superman costumes and all that kind of stuff. You can like it, you can not like it. That's fine, but it's not a big deal. It's the costume. But even I admit, I really don't like the red underwear. I mean, you guys know that. I don't like the red trunks. I think they look stupid. But even I, somebody who thinks vehemently that the red underwear on the outside of the costume looks really dumb and stupid, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Whatever. It's the costume. Who cares? The costume is not going to make the movie good or bad. I always bring this up. One of my favorite CW Arrowverse shows was Black Lightning. And Black Lightning had the most ass-awful costume I have ever seen in a superhero show. That costume sucked. Didn't matter. Didn't matter. The show was good. And it didn't matter if the costume was stupid or bad or whatever. It worked, and it worked great. And I kind of feel the same way about the Superman costume, whether or not the red underwear is there. You know what I mean? All right. Next up, we've got Random Updates, who writes, will Brainiac be in it, do you think? I see green tentacles in part of a teaser. Also, you think Supergirl arrives with Krypto and stays at the Fortress of Solitude, not an end cameo? No, I mean, first of all, I don't think Brainiac will be in this first one. There might be like a post-credit scene or a tease or something like that later on, possibly. But as far as Supergirl goes, my guess, again, just a guess. My guess is she's an end credit thing. I don't think she shows up with Krypto. Although Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow storyline, like she's going around the galaxy with Krypto. I don't know that they're going to be doing that in this. I think Krypto is there with Clark. I think he's always been Clark's dog. I might be wrong. I'm just guessing. So yeah, I think she's just going to be, I don't think she's just going to be holed up in the Fortress of Solitude for the whole movie. I think she's probably going to be either something that comes in near the end or a post-credit thing, but you never know. She might have a more important role than that. We'll see. All right. Let's see. Brandon Nope writes, John, is your family and friends safe from the fire? Yeah, we addressed this a little bit earlier. You know, we're in Riverside, California, which is like 45 minutes to an hour outside of LA. We're about a good 45 minutes from any of the closest fires to us. So yes, we are all good. Now, some friends of mine have not been as lucky. I talked about this on the show the other day. The guy who introduced Ann and I, the guy responsible for me meeting my wife, Milo Ventimiglia, his house burned down the day before his wife was due to deliver their first child. Talk about a stress you don't need in your life. So yeah, there are some people I know whose homes have been burned. It's terrible. But as far as Ann and I and our immediate family, we're a good distance away from the fires and stuff like that. So we're good. So thank you for asking. Let's see. Jerome writes, if Cynthia gets nominated for Wicked, what are the odds she wins and becomes the second black woman to win lead actress at the Oscars? I don't think very good. I think she can get a nomination. I do. I think she can get a nomination. I don't think she wins though. I just think there were a couple of better performances than her this year. Wicked's also been losing some momentum, but I could totally see her getting a nomination. She was fantastic in the movie. She was absolutely fantastic. But if I had to put my money on it, I didn't think this before, but I'm starting to think it now. I think Demi Moore might win it for, why am I freezing on the name of the movie now? Where she where somebody bursts out of her own skin. Why am I forgetting the name of that? You guys know it, whatever it is. I think she's probably The Substance. Is that what it's called? The Substance? Anyway. Yes, you guys are saying The Substance. Guillaume Lebel was the first one to say The Substance. If I had to put money on it right now, I think she probably wins. She probably wins it. I mean, she is ridiculously good in it. It came out of left field, but I think she probably might take it. All right. Next up. Let's see. Arjona as Wonder Woman, Elordi as Blue. Again, X actor and X role. As long as you're naming good performers in the role, I'm totally good with it. Like, that's the only thing. Because here's the thing about the X actor and X role thing, right? Is that you are naming actors for a character you have no idea what the character is going to be. You have no idea what the character is going to be. So we really have no idea if the X actor you're mentioning is even a fit for the character. Well, John, we know who Wonder Woman is. Doesn't matter. We know who Joker is too. This is the example I always like to bring up. Every Joker we've had has been incredibly unique. Jack's Joker was a very different Joker than Heath's Joker. Heath's Joker was a very different Joker than Joaquin's Joker. Joaquin's Joker was a completely different Joker than Jared's Joker. Jared's Joker was a completely different Joker than Caesar's Joker. Caesar's Joker was completely different from Mark Hamill's animated Joker. Like, all of them have definitely been Joker, but they've all been very different. Heath Ledger wouldn't have been a good choice to play Jack's Joker in the Michael Keaton Batman movie. Forget the era difference and the age difference. I'm just saying Heath Ledger would not have been a good fit for that role. Jack would not have been a good fit for Joaquin's at all. Jack's Jack. Play Joker already, but it's a very different Joker. You know, Heath was perfect for his Joker, but I don't think he would be a good fit for a lot of the other Jokers. So, like, we can say Wonder Woman, but Wonder Woman can be definitely Wonder Woman, but very, very different from another iteration of Wonder Woman. And we simply don't know how they're going to write Wonder Woman, and therefore we have no idea if any actor we bring up and mention may or may not be a good fit. So that's why I always say when somebody wants to bring up X actor and X role questions to me, I'll just say, I don't care. As long as I'm going to leave it to them to decide if they're finding somebody who's a good fit for the role, because only they know the script and only they know how this character is supposed to be. So only they know if any particular actor or actress is actually going to be a good fit for the role. So all that I as a fan want is make sure you're just hiring somebody who we consider to be a good performer. Because if you start off by hiring a bad actor, then I don't care whether or not you think they're a good fit. It's probably going to hurt the role. As long as you get somebody who's a good actor, that's fine. Now, I'll do some X actor and X role stuff, like fan casting stuff, when I have time to sit down and think about it for a day or two. And, you know, here's some people who I think have the skill level, and depending on how they write the character, could be a good fit. But we don't know. But even that's pretty precarious. So yeah, other than that, I don't care, because I simply don't know if the way they're going to write Wonder Woman, or the way they're going to write Damian Wayne, or the way they're going to write Batman, or the way they're going to write, name whatever character you want, a new Flash or a new Cyborg or a new Aquaman or a new whoever. I don't know how they're going to write them. So all I care about is, are you casting talented actors? And if you are, then I'll just give you as the casting people the benefit of the doubt that you're picking an actor who's actually a good fit. So yeah, I just leave it at that. All right. Next up, we've got Mr. I, who writes, do you think a certified small engines mechanic who's really good with snowblowers makes a good living in Canada? Asking for a friend, wink, wink. I'll tell you what, good mechanics who know how to operate, repair, and upkeep snow removal equipment, whether it's big truck size or personal handhelds, very good living you can earn in Canada, my friend. Very good living you can earn for yourself in Canada. All right. Let's see here. Christopher Brickner writes, if Portman appears in Ahsoka Season 2, we could get a scenario where we get a reunion of the prequels trio, but never got a reunion of the original trio. Shocking. Is it shocking? I don't care. The prequel trio is garbage compared to the original trio. And listen, I say that as somebody who loves my good Canadian boy, Hayden Christensen, who loves Ewan McGregor, and who loves Natalie Portman. But get out of here with the comparison. There's no comparing. Star Wars is Han, Luke, Leia. That's Star Wars. That's Star Wars. That is the heart and soul, the core of Star Wars, is Han, Luke, and Leia. That's the Star Wars trio. That's it. Not Ray, Puke, and Dunk. I can't remember the other guy's name now. I don't remember I don't even remember Boyega's character's name at this point. Finn. That's what it was. And Oscar Isaac's character. I don't even remember the name of the character now. So not those two. Sorry, not Ray, Finn, and Poe. Poe, that's his name. I was about to call him Moon Knight. The trio is not Ray, Finn, and Poe. The trio is not Anakin, Obi-Wan, Padme. There is only one trio, and it's Han, Luke, and Leia. Pepper in some Chewbacca, little R2 and 3PO. Of course, Vader's your bad guy, but I mean, your core, that's it. I know that Dave Filoni, who I like a lot, is obsessively, compulsively addicted to nothing but the idea of trying to make Ahsoka a major thing in Star Wars. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. Well, John, to the hardcore Star Wars fans, I don't give a shit about that. To the wide culture-altering audience, culture, Star Wars is Han, Luke, and Leia. It ain't Clone Wars stuff. It ain't the prequel trilogy garbage. It's Han, Luke, and Leia. That's what it is. I know there are some people that say the Hayden, Ewan, Portman thing and the characters as portrayed in Clone Wars is very, very special to a group of people. I respect that. I'm not trying to take away from that at all in any way, shape, or form. Forgive me if it sounds like I am. I'm not. I'm really not. But it's just it. It's that group of people. It ain't culturally defining the way Han, Luke, and Leia are. That's it. It's the only ones, Christopher. There is only Motorhead. Anyway, if some of you will understand that reference, some of you won't. Anyway, Isaac Martinez writes, The Brutalist is a very good movie, John. I can connect to this movie because of the American dream and the life of an immigrant. Oh, hey, listen, I'm not saying The Brutalist isn't a good... Nowhere will you find me saying The Brutalist isn't a good movie. What I did say was the second half becomes... The way Jonathan defined it, and I agree with him, the second half becomes kind of laborious. It becomes a little weighted. The second half of the movie, to me, loses some of its momentum. And, you know, you're talking to the grandson and son of immigrants. You know, I mean, my family's story is the story of coming over on the boat. That's my family, including my dad, came over on the boat, man. And so the themes of it are great. And I think it's a very good movie. All of that, I'm not taking away from any of that. I'm just simply saying in this movie that I like very much, that the second half becomes weighted down a bit. And that's just a pacing and yeah, it's just that. All right. Next up. Oh, you know what? That's it. That's all the questions. We got through all of them. Oh my goodness. Only took us 2 hours and 12 minutes to do it, but we got through all of them. But I'll tell you what, we're still going to take a couple of more. So if you guys who are watching live, do me a favor. If you have a question you'd like me to address, look in the live chat right now. See how I wrote question : if you have a question, format it like that so I know that you're talking to me. I'm not going to answer all of them. I'm just going to pick a couple more to read off before we end off here tonight. Let's see. Josh writes, question: what was the first movie you saw in a Dolby Cinema? Oh, you know what? I can't remember now off the top of my head. I remember where it was. It was in the Burbank 16. I still remember the first time walking into that place and being kind of overwhelmed by it, but I cannot remember which movie it was. It's a great question, but I honestly don't remember. Dana White writes, will you move back to Canada? 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be moving back to Canada at some point. You know, my wife right now, she's finishing her doctorate. She's vice president of a major international marketing company. We're going to go through that. But we've always been very clear. At some point, we will move back to Canada. 100%. Like, especially, you know, when we decide... anyway, we are definitely going to move back to Canada at some point. Not immediately. Not today, not tomorrow. But we're definitely going to move back to Canada at some point. 100%. That's always been the plan. Always been the plan. Let's see. Charlie the Unicorn writes, which movie will make the most in 2025? That to me, that's an easy one. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but I think pretty clearly your pick has to be Avatar 3. All right. I'm not saying that's going to be the best one, but it's got to be Avatar 3. Let's see. Nobody Wins writes, question: are you watching anything tonight before you go to bed? Yes, but I don't know what. I honestly don't know what. I might watch finally the first episode of Silo Season 2. I still haven't gotten started on Silo Season 2, so maybe that one. All right, Robert Presser writes, do you think Punisher will show up in Cap 4 or Thunderbolts? Absolutely not. No chance. Again, I don't know for a fact, but I would be shocked if they did. Let's see. Mark H. Choi writes, question, must give Better Man a chance. No, I don't, and I'm not going to. Better biopic than A Complete Unknown. Was also going to skip it like you until I realized Robbie Williams sees himself as a monkey rather than as a star. Humbling. Doesn't matter. Look, again, we did a video a week or two ago where we talked about Better Man and the fact that it is absolutely flopped, right? Let me just see if I can pull it up here. It has absolutely completely flopped at the box office. And listen, it's directed by a guy I love. It's directed by the guy who directed Greatest Showman. So, and I love Greatest Showman. So I have every reason to believe that the movie's quite good. Okay. Every movie to believe that the movie's quite good. But it has completely flopped. Look at this. Worldwide, it has made $14.5 million. Worldwide. This is one of the biggest flops in cinematic history. Now, we did a video talking about the flopping of Better Man. And let me just, production, let me see if I can bring this up. All right. The movie cost $110 million to make. $110 million to make. That's not including marketing. It has made $14 million. It's made about 10 times less than its overall budget with marketing. It's one of the biggest flops in cinematic history. Not the biggest flop in cinematic history, but it's one of them. It ranks way up there. And so we did a video about how it has financially failed. And we talked about why we think it may be financially failed. And I was very clear in that video. Hey, listen, I hear the movie's really good. I've talked to people who've said it's a really, really good film. And the fact that Michael Gracie, who is the director, again, the guy who directed Greatest Showman, he's fantastic. I totally believe the movie is probably really good. I believe that. I do. I believe it. But we're not talking about how good or not good the movie is. We're talking about the fact that it is a major cinematic flop. And why did it flop? And there is just no getting around that one of the reasons this movie flopped so badly is because the gimmick of it did not strike a chord with audiences. There was no way to market it. Like, why is the lead singer of the boy band a monkey? Oh, because you see in real life, he kind of sees the monkey as his spirit animal. And so why the fuck did you have to do him as a CGI monkey? Well, because you know that's the way he sees himself. It was a bad idea, guys. It was a bad idea. Is anybody surprised that nobody, and I mean nobody, went to go see this movie? They should have just done it as a Robbie Williams biopic. I feel very confident. I'm not saying that the movie would have been a $500 million movie, but I feel very confident that if you just straight up made Better Man exactly the same, except with an actor playing Robbie Williams instead of a motion capture actor with a CGI monkey, and you marketed it that way, this movie would have made 10 times the amount of money it did. Minimum 10 times the amount of money that it did. Now, there are a bunch of brain dead morons then who jumped in my comments section and said, whoa, why are you giving a bad review to a movie you didn't even see? Fuck off, you ignorant piece of shit. I didn't give a bad review to a movie I didn't see. I said I heard the movie is really quite good. I've said it's got a great director. I'm sure the movie is good. What we're talking about, since you're too fucking slow to understand it the first time I said it, you morons, was that the movie flopped, and we're going to speculate about why it flopped. And it had nothing to do with the quality of the movie. We never once called the quality of the movie into question at all. We simply said the fact that this movie has flopped, majorly flopped. So why didn't people go and give it a chance? And I said, I can only speak for myself, that the marketing campaign and the gimmick used to make and promote this movie was a bad idea. Because I looked at that and I said, no interest. And guess what? Everybody else had the same reaction. This movie didn't even make $2 million in North America. Not even $2 million in North America. Made $1.9 million in North America. Because nobody wanted to go see this. They did it, so it was a stupid gimmick to start with that wasn't going to translate, and then they marketed it terribly because nobody understood, what the hell are you trying to do here? What's going on? Why is the monkey singing? And they just did a terrible job with it. And you can argue with me all you want. You can disagree with me all you want. But guys, the numbers are the numbers. It's made $1.9 million. Madam Web made 15 times more at the box office than Better Man did. And again, that is no commentary at all on the quality of the film. Because again, I have heard the movie's quite good, but it is not my job as a movie fan, and it's not your job as a movie fan. You're not obligated to run out and see every movie that comes out. It's their job to make a movie and then market that movie in such a way that it hits home with you and attracts you to want to come and see it. And they completely dropped the ball on that. They completely dropped the ball on it. And nobody wanted to go to see it. And so here's the thing, though. The thing is that I have so much that I really want to watch that I'm so far behind on. I just talked about Silo. I still haven't started on Lioness. There's a bunch of other things I want to get caught up on. That I'm going to use my time, the limited time that I have, as a viewer to watch things that have interested me. And Better Man, despite the fact that I hear it's quite good, they did a horrible job of getting anybody interested in it. They did not market this thing well at all. And it is one of the biggest box office flops in history. Regardless of how good it is. Again, that's not me making any commentary about how good or bad the film is. I'm just talking about the concept of the film, the gimmick they used in it, and then how they went about marketing it. It literally turned everybody off. Nobody wanted to go see this movie. Hence, worldwide, it's made $14 million. That is something you don't recover from. That's not something you recover from, unfortunately. All right. Let's see. Next up here, we got Spooter, who writes, will you cover Invincible Season 3? No, I will not. I didn't really cover Invincible Season 2 either. I'll be honest with you. Listen, I loved Invincible Season 1. I loved it. I did not love Invincible Season 2. And so hopefully when they do have Invincible Season 3 come out, I'm definitely going to sit down and give it a bit of a watch. Hopefully it gets back on track, but I'm not planning on covering it. I'm planning on watching it, but I'm not planning on covering it. And I do hope it kind of has a resurgence, but yeah, like I said, I didn't love Season 2. I really didn't. Let's see. Where are we at here? Brandon just said, next movie is a remake of Rocket Man with Elton John as a CGI rocket. Let's see. Jose is saying, I think Better Man will get nominated at the Oscars. No chance in fuck. No chance in fuck that happens. I mean, maybe it could win a technical award, right? Like, what it will not be nominated for is Best Picture. But if you're talking about like one of the technical awards or a costuming award or a CGI award or something like that, it's possible. It's possible. But they're definitely not going to get any kind of nomination for like Best Picture or anything. Let's see. Where are we at? I'm trying to find one more. I'm not finding any. Okay, anyway, guys, that'll do it for this almost 2.5-hour episode of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here and making this little show a part of your evening. I really appreciate having you guys here. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us involved with the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you guys so very much for your support. Hey guys, don't forget, tomorrow morning, me and Rob talking about the Oscar nominations that are coming out in the morning. I hope you guys will come by and talk as we kind of dive into it, analyze it, give our reactions to it. It's one of the biggest days of the movie year, the day the Oscar nominations come out. Hope you guys will come by and join us for that. So that'll do it for us for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.